This is an extra petty Fallout Leftovers about Google Books. Guinness World Records 2009 Gamers Edition. You can find it on Google Books. You can look up snippets from it. I, during the writing of the script, looked up Fallout in Gamers Edition 2009 because I remembered it had a really dumb quote about the game that made a whole lot of sense given how the game is seen by general audiences. And it was there until I was actually doing the edit, and then that page was blank. So I had to write the contents of that blurb, which I quoted verbatim in the script. I had to write them into an MS Paint text window, take a photograph of that text window with my phone, import it into GIMP, crunch it up a little so there's some artifacts and things. I then had to... I played with the histogram really bad to get it looking really crunchy and black and white like it was photocopied or Xeroxed, and then I compressed it again. So when you're watching the video and you're like, that is a very clean blurb on Google Books that doesn't look like a photocopy scan, it wasn't. It absolutely was not. And I'm sorry, I lied to you, but it was for movie magic. This is Fallout Leftovers. We are talking weapons. Where do we begin? I guess Fallout 1 is a logical place to begin. They're fine. The weapons in Fallout 1 are fine. I do like that you have way more unarmed options than any other Fallout, because you can throw kicks, there's like punches and sweeps and other sorts of unarmed class weapons. So you have options. And honestly, Bethesda should bring back the alt fires. Even if it's just, switch between single and burst fire on guns, or switch between a faster but weaker punch and a heavier kick, that's fine. You can do that. It'd be nice to have those. But in terms of the weaponry in Fallout 1, it's fine. I can actually probably throw up H3VR footage of the weapons in Fallout, because I was actually at one point working on a weapon video, a Fallout 2 weapon video in H3VR, because that's the best way to get footage of some of those weapons. But yeah, the weapon variety in Fallout 1 isn't bad. There are like one or two questionable choices. There is, I believe, a Mauser pistol as one of your options, but to get it is a pain in the neck, and it's not very good, which is funny. And then there's the Desert Eagle 44, which is just kind of a stand-in for a 44 revolver. But that's odd because the Colt 6920, which is the 10mm pistol, I believe is depicted as a revolver on the sprite. So, a little bizarre. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of footage of shooting guns in Fallout 1 and 2 because I used saves. I found saves online. I used a save editor to keep the name, age, and gender of the character consistent. I might have fudged some of the special numbers here and there where possible. But otherwise, almost all the footage of Fallouts 1 and 2 that you see are saves or the beginning of the game. I didn't play through both those games. They're like 20 hours long each. There's no way this video could have come out if I had to play through those games beginning to end. Maybe if I started earlier, or if 76 was shorter. Fallout 2, that was where things get weird, because Fallout 2 has the Pancor jackhammer, it has the Cause shotgun, it has the G11, which is this bewildering device where you load a magazine in the front from a quiver you keep on your shoulder. You turn a little clockwork dial 360 degrees to chamber one of its caseless rounds, and the magazine reciprocates, and that's how it, pushes the magazine in, which pushes a round down into this clockwork device that spins every time it fires, so it can point the bullet forward. It ignites the powder, which leaves nothing but the little plastic cap thing, which should just spit out of the barrel anyways, and then the bullet goes forward, and then it grabs a new round. It's stupid. And all of those weapons are products of the 1980s. Fallout 2 plays a lot looser with the world of Fallout and kind of the times and dates. It does a lot of things good. I am not going to sit here and say Fallout 2 is a bad game, because it really isn't. It just hasn't aged well, and it really doesn't know what it wants to be. But the same can be said for Sonic Adventure 1, and I love that game to death. Tactics gets even more bizarre, because Tactics is just straight up like, hey, do you want an MP5? We have an MP5. I believe that game's got a whole bunch of insane weapons. We can just, wiki crawl. It's ridiculous. I don't get it at all. I honestly think it was just done because it was cool. And it kind of is. I will say the one thing that bothers me about Fallouts 1 and 2 is you kind of go unarmed and melee to guns to energy weapons. Which is kind of frustrating, because I like the guns more than the energy weapons, because there really is no bearing for what the energy weapons are, IRL. I think the closest thing is the plasma pistol in the DOS Fallouts, later the plasma defender, is supposed to be a Glock product. But as I expressed in Fallout in Analysis, it would not look anything like that sprite. Because Glock only knows how to do one weapon type. And it's a plastic rectangle with a plastic italicized rectangle attached to it. But Fallout 3, I don't like Fallout 3's arsenal at all. Honestly, I don't like Fallout 4's either. Fallout 3 and 4, weapon variety is awful. None of them are really based on real-world weapons except for the revolvers. Everything else is kind of just this gross mismatch. Fallout 3's assault rifle is kind of a FAL, it's kind of a Galil, kind of an AK, kind of a Colt. It's just kind of like everything. It's like a TF2 gun. It's just like 4 guns stapled together. The plasma weapons, and actually all the energy weapons in Fallout 3 look like garbage. They look like they're just kind of cobbled together. They look like props from an old 50s B movie, which I guess is the point, but it's just such a frustrating look. New Vegas, though. New Vegas probably has my favorite weapons of the bunch, because you've got your 9mm pistol is, your 9mm pistol is a Browning high power. The 45 auto pistol is a 1911. I freaking love the 1911. It's one of the few guns IRL that I actually like. Aesthetically, I'm not a big fan of firearms. They're all just kind of ugly and designed for murder. But the 1911, the Ithaca 37, and the M1 Garand, I can appreciate. And speaking of the Garand, it's in New Vegas, and I love it in New Vegas. Any game that has the Garand and it does the shing, if it's a Garand and it doesn't do the shing, I'm disappointed. Wholesale, completely disappointed. But it's got it, and they made the shing happen with Gamebryo, which kudos to them. But the plasma defender looks kind of neat. The plasma caster I could probably do without. It's kind of just weird. I don't get it. Pretty much every weapon introduced in a DLC other than Old World Blues, I love. The only reason I have to exclude Old World Blues is because they're very out there, and I'm a bit uncomfortable with the prospect of my gun as a dog. And then Fallout 4 was just back to crap. I hate the assault rifle in Fallout 4 so much. The combat rifle should be called an assault rifle, and the assault rifle should be called a machine gun, because it's a light machine gun. It's actually based on concept art of a light machine gun they did for Fallout 4. They just gave it the wrong name. I used mods to give them correct names. You might have noticed that. I also put a bunch of New Vegas guns in Fallout 4, and that made the game actually more bearable, because I hate the standard arsenal. The only gun out of the standard arsenal I like is probably the handmade rifle, But even then, Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 are on my shit list because all the weapons are left-handed, but you play as a right-handed character. Now, I get why they did that. It's so the shell casings fly across the whole screen instead of just kind of spinning off into the corner. But it sucks. All the animations are jank. The hunting rifle is especially horrible because you have to watch Nate figure out how the hell he's going to get his hand over to cock the bolt with his left. It's bad. And I tried looking for mods to replace the Southpaw rifles with proper right-handed rifles. And it seems like anybody who's attempted one has kind of given up because it's such a daunting ordeal. And I can't really blame them. It's a disappointment. One thing I will say about 76, and it's actually something I like from 4, there's pump-action shotguns and lever-action rifles. In Fallout 4, the lever-action rifle is just a canned animation of putting in 5 rounds. You can't interrupt that. New Vegas, you can interrupt. And in 76, you can interrupt, although I believe the only weapon that uses it is the pump-action shotgun. But I like that. It's a bit of detail that I honestly feel like should be in any FPS. If you're going to give me a weapon that loads one shell or one bullet at a time, like a volcanic pistol, a lever-action rifle, pump-action shotgun, I should be able to interrupt that reload to fire a round. And 76 and New Vegas let you. It's honestly amazing how much I end up praising 76 in this Fallout Leftovers video because the game sucks. Like, watch my review of Fallout 76. The game sucks. Like, even though they fixed, like, the level gaps, like, grinding for weapon mods is a chore. The map is too big for its own good. Movement is slow. Fast travel costs caps. Dying costs caps. And on your way to a place, you can just be gunned down. But again, like, the weapons in Fallout 76, to get back on track, are neat. Like, the brand new ones. Pump-action shotgun is very much appreciated. The hand-cranked Gatling gun is a little overkill in my opinion, but I guess it's fine. They added the plasma caster in the Wastelanders update, which is appreciated. I appreciate that Bethesda will go to some lengths to incorporate DOS-era fan service into their modern titles. They need to incorporate the DOS-era ideologies of the games too, otherwise you really aren't making a Fallout. You're kind of making a Fallout 3. But the weapon variety in 76 is like half bad and half good. Everything that they brought over from 4 is lame. Everything new is quite alright. I wish they would go the extra mile and incorporate things like, you know, the 45 auto pistol or, hell, add 9mm. I am sick of 10mm being the bottom tier. Or, there's the pipe weapons. I hate the pipe weapons. They're gross. They're ugly. They don't do much damage. We don't need them. Just give me like a 9mm, like, Browning high power, or, I don't want to say a Beretta. God, give us the Walther P38, or the PPK. There is a PPK. It's in Fallout 4. It's called the Deliverer, but it shoots 10 mil. And it's gross. It's huge. It ate its goddamn vegetables. The frickin' Fall Guys Twitter is looking to give it a meme name. I just want more real-world weaponry in the Fallout games. And I get that, like, the fictitious weapons are trying to be, like, modern-ish in the context of Fallout. These are the weapons that have come out in the 2000s to 2070s. I get that. But god damn it, a water-cooled battle rifle. Like, liquid cooling is already, like, a pain enough. And now you've liquid-cooled a rifle. And it's the assault rifle. You could argue that the assault rifle is the way it is in Fallout 4 and 76 because it's trying to make this point that, oh, in the power armor it feels like nothing. No. And then the combat rifle and the combat shotgun, they're just such an uninspired, kind of boring design. I don't know. It could be better. And then Fallout 4 and 76 have a bunch of gimmick weapons, like there's the paddle ball in 4, and there's the powder musket weapons in 76. Or like the black powder weapons. I believe there's black powder weapons. I'm pretty sure there are. Stupid. Awful. Don't like them. And that's that on that. This is Fallout Leftovers, technically an addendum to the weapons section. Weapon mods. I like the Fallout 4 style a lot, but I want custom ammo types too. Also, don't simplify the ammo types, please. Just tell me it's a 12 gauge shell. Don't tell me it's a shotgun shell. There's multiple types of shotgun shell. Also, for the love of God, model and or texture the little ridges, the little like bits at the top that unfold. Please model those because it's really distracting and irritating that they're smooth on top. Okay, that's it. This is Fallout Leftovers, and this in particular is about cynicism and idealism because on TV tropes, for whatever reason, they're like, yeah, the games are cynical, but they lean idealistic, which I guess is correct. It's not super correct, but I guess hypothetically it is correct. In that the games, especially New Vegas, New Vegas in particular seems to have the notion that the world can recover. And in fact, that is the whole point of Ulysses' final monologue. Whether you kill him or not, and he leaves you that holotape that pretty much tells you what the new world needs to be the new world and not just old world 2. So yeah, there is some idealism for the future, but the series isn't about the future. You know, as backwards as it sounds, you know, especially for New Vegas, a game that tells you, you know, don't dwell in the past, don't dwell in the past. The point of Fallout is, the point for us as players and as an audience is to look at the past. We have a world funded by mega corporations and lobbyist groups and oligarchs who don't want to look for the future. They don't want to, you know, future-proof the world. You know, on their list of priorities, Mother Earth is nowhere on that list. Profits is like number 1. Their own safety is number 2. Their brand image is number 3. Your safety is probably somewhere at the very bottom of the top 10, or right in the middle or the back half of the top 20, because they need your money. But that's not on the global scale. That's not, you know, what I'm talking about with that is less, you know, we need to cut down our carbon emissions so we can live longer on the planet. But it's, you know, BP inventing the carbon footprint so you can see how much carbon you put out in the atmosphere. And you can then cut down that number. That's how they care. They're not going to change how they do business. They're just going to find ways to shame you as consumers into consuming the way they want you to consume. You also see that a lot with like fear of missing out. You know, they could make all the cosmetics and Fall Guys just available forever. But then you're not going to buy them all straight away. You're not going to play for hours on end to grind for all of them, or open loot crates, or however the hell Fall Guys works. No. Instead, they put it down on you. You know, you are running out of time to, you know, collect the Sonic skin, or whatever. And that's kind of what I'm getting about with, you know, all the mega corporations of the Fallout world. Even to the last days of the Earth, companies like Corvega were not trying to help anybody. Unless you were shopping for a new car. At which point, baby oh baby, do they have a deal for you. And it is fucked up. It is legitimately fucked up if that is just how the world of Fallout works. But that is the world we're in right now. We see that with the pandemic. March or April, Burger King and AMC were like, when everything's back to normal, we want to see you here. And now that we might be looking at another year or two of the COVID pandemic, or even worse, this is just what we deal with forever as a society. Thank you, America. The ads are now just like, well, if you're going to die, might as well die at McDonald's eating the Travis Scott burger. I don't know what any of those words mean, but that is how the advertising has changed over the course of this pandemic. And yes, there is a Travis Scott McDonald's burger. I don't know what makes it different at all. So while the people of the Fallout world and lore can become more idealistic and look towards the future, we as players have to look at the past. What did the world of Fallout do to end up the way it ended up? And then how do we make sure that we don't do that? And the answers are relatively simple. They put too much stock into corporations. Corporations pretty much owned the government. And, we see that in ourselves. Secondly, they were just fascist. America was fascist and exceptionalist. So we can maybe tone down, our super far right-wing ideologies and find a better center ground with the rest of the world. That is a call-out post for Republicans and conservatives in the U.S. Get with it. Every other developed nation is flourishing. You aren't. And the moment we start seeing fascism in our lives, we crush it. We absolutely, irrevocably destroy it. It's like weeds in your lawn. You don't leave some weeds in hopes that they become better. You destroy the weeds because they're going to choke out the rest of your lawn. That's how fascism works. You see it, get rid of it. You don't leave a couple of the moles and whack-a-mole standing so that all the moles get better. No. You whack the fucking moles. So I think at the end of the day, it is, an idealistic series, but the world of Fallout is important for us as a civilization and a society to look at. And other similar stories. Things like, the first half of Wall-E. I might have mentioned this in another leftover or not. I don't know. But the people who made Wall-E weren't trying to spread an environmentalist message or even an anti-consumerist message. But that world only works when consumerism destroys the earth. And we can't just, say, well, they intended for that to just be how we get to the funny spaceship, so we can't look at that. No, you analyze it. Analyze all parts of media, because every little bit of every little piece of media ever produced tells us something about the world. So look at them, break them down, and learn from them. Fallout gives us a cynical, depraved society. How did it get there? Let's take it apart. Look at the pieces. Oh shit, it's because we are that. Well, we gotta fix that. So that way, in 20, 30 years, when kids play Fallout 1 for the first time, all of those ideas are foreign. I mean, I'm kidding myself. They aren't gonna play Fallout 1. Those kids are gonna probably play Fallout 4. But those ideas, hopefully, will become foreign. They'll look at Liberty Prime and be like, what is this robot even talking about? They're not going to go, ha, he's killing communists. Wait, no, he's not. He's not. Liberty Prime isn't. This is Fallout Leftovers, and I'm actually talking about the time I tried to pretty much make this video, but even before I started writing this video. So I started writing Fallout Analysis in 2017, and it went through a couple iterations before it became what it is now. But even before then, this was probably 2012 or 2013, maybe 2014. It had to have been 2014. I tried to make pretty much this exact video, but less informed. So for folks who don't know, I played Fallout 3 first, and then I played New Vegas. And then I bought 1 and 2, but I didn't really play them until in analysis, and you could even argue I didn't really play them because I just used saves. It's fine. But I played Fallout 3 first, and that game was considered one of the best RPGs ever, according to... Which, it was in a Guinness Book of World Records Gamers edition. They had, like, top 10 best RPGs. And up near the top, like, up there with, Chrono Trigger was Fallout 3. And I was just like, yeah, Fallout 3, one of the best games ever made. And then I played New Vegas, and that game is rated much lower because critics looked at it about when it came out. They were like, it was like a year after Fallout 3. It reused a lot of things that Fallout 3 used. It didn't have an ending, and if you played the Yes-Man route, it was a very short game. So that game got an 84 on Metacritic versus like the 97 or 98 that Fallout 3 had. And I started writing this video talking about how Fallout 3 is one of the best RPGs ever made, but New Vegas, fans of New Vegas claim it's better. And immediately I jumped to defend Fallout 3 by saying that its combat environments are more closed spaces that are more fun to navigate versus the more open desert of New Vegas, which I do partly agree with. But I didn't then back that up with, well, combat isn't all you do in either game. You know, you can sneak around an environment, or you can actually use your other skills to get out of jams. New Vegas will let you wear a disguise. You can wear, like, a Legionary's outfit, and Caesar's Legion people will leave you alone. But the NCR will attack you. You can wear Brotherhood of Steel power armor, and the NCR will fight you, but other factions will just think you're Brotherhood of Steel. You can wear NCR, like, soldier gear, and the Legion will attack you, but you can then just walk onto any NCR property. Like, I didn't take that into consideration, because I had only played, like, 3 hours of New Vegas by this point. I was writing this video from the perspective of somebody just trying to defend Fallout 3. Because that was me, circa 2014. I got better, evidently. I actually played New Vegas. I didn't beat it until this video, but I'd come very, very close. And I didn't necessarily need to play the ending to understand New Vegas. And I think that's really kind of a strength of New Vegas. You don't need to play all the way to the end to know where things are going. I mean, you could take that as being that New Vegas is a very cut and dry game with a very cut and dry ending with no twist. But saying it that way makes it sound like... But you could take that as me saying that Fallout 3's twist is exciting and it changes the game. No, it doesn't. It's the dumbest decision Bethesda ever made. You, age 19, have to die because your father also died and you're doing his job for him because he's dead. I hate getting personal, but my dad died. I'm not going to kill myself trying to do what he didn't do. I'm not going to go climb up on the roof and fix the roof, but kill myself fixing the roof. No, I'm going to get somebody who is capable of fixing the roof to fix the roof. Broken steel alleviates that, but god damn it, I hate that is how they decided Fallout 3 was going to end, and they were content with that. Because it is straight up the dumbest part of... I don't know if it's the dumbest thing in any of the Bethesda Fallouts. No, it is. Well, maybe Scorch Beasts? No, yeah, okay. Raise the DEFCON level, and it's ultrasight, not radiation. Those are definitely the two dumbest things in Fallout. But Fallout 3 ends with you having to kill yourself is definitely in the top 3. I can't think of anything else that would be in third place. And I blame Pagliarulo in Fallout and Analysis. But there's like a dozen writers on Fallout 3. And one of them probably thought that what they were writing was kind of this noble, cool, kind of cyclical hero's journey type thing. And to that, I respect that could be the work of somebody else. Whoever wrote that is still, like, I hope they've realized their mistake in the past decade, because that is not at all how anyone should end a video game. If you've written yourself into a corner where you think that sort of sacrifice is cool and noble and needs to happen, even when there's logical alternatives literally standing in front of you, you need to reevaluate what you've written. All I'm going to say is, if the prisoner could send a drone up to Bomb 001 to blow up Bomb 001, they would do that and keep themselves alive. Like, obviously they couldn't do that because that's how Van Buren pans out, or would have panned out. I talk about Van Buren like it exists. It's documents and like a technical demo, so I guess it exists. Yeah, I mean, to cut a long story short, I tried writing a Fallout 3 versus Fallout New Vegas video, and it was just as biased as if a Sony fan made an N64 versus PlayStation video. Like, obviously one is a better adaptation of the source material than the other. In the case of my PS1 versus N64 example, one of the two consoles is technically superior. And it's the PlayStation, because it's a CD-based console. It's got a ton of memory for the time. And you can make bigger, fuller games. I kind of just ignore that. I guess this would be a Nintendo fan making that video now. But, okay, there's a way to spin it for both of these. I didn't have a way to spin it for the Fallout 3, so I ran out of script immediately. I don't think I got past a second point, which was something like, where I left it was, I end up talking about how Fallout 3 lets you see the damage done to DC, which is cooler than seeing the damage done to Vegas. Which I guess is correct. But I don't know if you needed to see the damage done to DC. I don't think that actually makes Fallout 3 better. It's a more interesting world, and flies in the face of the Fallout Bible, which straight up says something along the lines of, DC will forever be inhospitable. But again, I was not in a place to make a video like this in 2014. I was 17 years old. I barely even knew that I was asexual. Like, I didn't know jack. And, it took me having to get a goddamn degree in game development to kind of realize what I'm looking at in a video game and kind of talk about it. So I am glad that I didn't just jump in and write this video and post it in 2014 or 2015, because it would have gone over bad, and I don't think high school me would have known why people were upset with the video. They would just be like, well, there's more haters. No, it's because what you're talking about really doesn't make sense. It's like when young James Rolfe did that SNES versus Genesis video, and some of his points that made SNES better than the Genesis were Nintendo Power Magazine, stickers for the controllers, and Tiger handheld versions of Simon's Quest. It was that. I had effectively made that. This is Fallout Leftovers, and I am going to be talking about why I cover 76, but not Fallout Shelter or Tactics or any of the other side games. Why I focus exclusively on Fallout 76 for the side games. Why did I lump it in with, 1, 2, 3, 4 in New Vegas? And the answer is, it's still like a 30-hour campaign. Fallout Shelter doesn't really have a campaign. Fallout Shelter Online has like a gachapon system, and you can unlock like a classy 3-dog and some other things. I don't know. Fallout Shelter and Fallout Shelter Online are two separate games, first of all. Fallout Shelter Online is a Chinese, I believe it's a gachapon-based, like, mobile idle RPG or something. I don't know the specifics, but it's designed for Chinese audiences, which is the funniest shit when we're talking Fallout. You know, how do you sanitize the world of Fallout for the Chinese government to accept? Because the game is straight up about American exceptionalism and a government so hell-bent on destroying China, they destroyed themselves first. So how do you make a game like that palatable for Chinese audiences? I don't know. There's nothing I can say about Fallout Shelter. Simply put, Fallout Shelter is a game where you tap some buttons till the game tells you that you need to spend some money or wait to tap more buttons. You know, that's that. No surprise, I hold quite a bit of contempt for the mobile market. And a lot of that is because it's just garbage, and even like the AAAs are getting in on it. Like EA's best on mobile is no different from, you know, the hyper casual, you know, shake your phone back and forth to move a ball through a maze thing. Or what is the one? Draw some shapes, and then that shape gets like flung out of a catapult and tumbles around in space, or like it tumbles across, like it's like the infinite cannon games, but you draw the shape and then you level up the cannon, and then all the ads are like noob versus pro, all the games where you pull a pin out of a fucking thing, like, and it's got like the Family Guy ass art style. Like, all those games are what the mobile game market is. And then big companies also do that because it sells. Because it's kind of just a market of suckers, unfortunately. You know, you did have AAAs on mobile in like 2008, 2009, 2010. Super Monkey Ball. It had a mobile game. BioShock almost became a mobile FPS. I so hope somewhere out there that like ISO of BioShock on mobile exists, because I actually do want to play it. That'll be the only BioShock I actually complete. And a lot of people realized, hey, this sucks. So then they stopped making those games. And then it just became more and more casual, more and more casual, even more casual. And then it reached like the very bottom of the barrel. And then all of a sudden Fortnite came out, and then people tried to do more stuff like that, but it didn't last long. And then Epic screwed up and got their game pulled from the App Store, and here we are. But as a result, Fallout Shelter is really just a mobile game. Even if you play it on Switch, even if you play it on PC, I believe it's on Xbox and PlayStation, it's not a Fallout. It's a game that wears Fallout ideas and not even themes, like aesthetics, like a hat and a new coat. Fallout Shelter is not a game that loves being a Fallout game. It's not a Fallout game that wants to explore the world of Fallout. It just wants to put funny Vault Boy cartoons in your face until you give them money. Fallout 76 is different, I would argue, in that it is like a 30-hour campaign with a second 30-hour campaign on top of it. Fallout 76 is like one of the longest main campaigns I have ever played. And for what it's worth, that doesn't actually even mean anything, because so much of that game is just having to walk from A to B, then B to A, then A to C, then C to B, then B to D, then D to A. And you just repeat that process until a character tells you to go see this other character, who then has you walk from G to D, from D to B, from B to F, from F to C, from C to A, and then A to G. And then you repeat that, and then they go tell you to, hey, go meet these people, the Brotherhood of Steel. They're at this military base. You need to be a soldier. And then they take you to the Cranberry Bog and fucking kill you. And Bethesda tries to say, oh, you know, Fallout 76 is not our next mainline Fallout game. You know, we are still working on a fifth major Fallout. We're still working on Elder Scrolls 6. We're still working on Starfield. But I doubt it. I don't doubt that those games are in development, but I doubt that they're not going to try to count 76 as a major Fallout game in like a year's time. In 2021, 2022, they're going to be like, why are people clamoring for a Fallout 5? They should play the Wastelanders expansion of Fallout 76. Like, that's a whole story that takes use of this environment and contains many of your favorite weapons from Fallout 4. The fact of the matter is, Bethesda is going to try to assert that this is the next major Fallout game, even though it's been in development and it's been out for, 3 years? 2 years? Came out in 2018. And I sincerely think that they are going to do that. And I think immediately people are going to call me crazy for trying to say that Fallout 76 is a main Fallout game, and its themes and its themes and gameplay gestalts need to be examined. I think the video's not out yet. Fallout Analysis is not out yet. It's still about a week from launch when I'm recording this. But I think a lot of people are going to hold that opinion. It's a good video, but then you start talking about 76. 76 isn't a main Fallout game. And right now, Bethesda says the same thing. This is not a replacement for a main Fallout. But at some point, they're just going to be like, you know what? No, it is. Fallout 76 contains a campaign as long as Fallout 3 with all of its expansions. It contains a second campaign that's almost as long as New Vegas with all of its expansions. It contains a vast amount of the arsenal from Fallout 4. You know what? Fuck it. It is a main Fallout game. And if you want what's next for the Fallout series, you should play and buy 76. And I'm going to tell you right now that I already did, and it sucks, and it's not worth it. Fallout 76, I've said it once, I'm going to say it, actually I've said it like 4 times. I'm going to say it 1,000,000 times before I'm dead. Fallout 76 is not a good Fallout game at all. It's a good addition to the world of Fallout. No other Fallout game really tries to approach the labor side of the pre-war. Fallout 4 and Van Buren are the only 2 games that explore pre-war life. And Van Buren only does it in its technical demo, and I don't think that should count. In Fallout 4, you play as either an upper middle class or just straight up an upper class citizen. You only get to see like 10 seconds of pre-war life, and then you head for the hills, and then oopsies, everything's bombed and sad. 76 shows us what, the proletariat was dealing with. Their job is getting taken away from them, and they're not getting any supplemental income. Living in the U.S. is getting harder and harder every day. The dollar is next to useless, and what wages we can get are pitiful. Some of these people would be lucky if they have enough money to get a donut at Slocum's Joe at the end of the day. No other Fallout game has approached, the world of, blue-collar labor in the Fallout world. And for that, I think 76 does need to be celebrated a little bit. But Fallout 76 should have been about, just regular blue-collar workers, down on their luck, can't make a dime, their job's getting taken away by machines, and a company comes up to them and says, hey, we can guarantee you 25 years of solid labor. And the player takes it, and now they're in their, early mid-40s, and they're leaving the vault. And they did not even know that the world got nuked in there. They were sealed away in 2076, did some administrative or blue-collar work in the vault. Now they're leaving, and they get to see, the rural paradise of West Virginia. And then all of a sudden, you're getting attacked by a snallygaster, and it's like, suddenly this realization hits that something bad happened in the last 25 years. And you go back to, your old place of work, and you see that it's been taken over by, mole miners or scorched or whatever the hell you want to put in there. I don't know, let's have fun. Let's stick Brahmin in there. Evil, ravenous Brahmin. And now, you explore the post-war world from the lens of a blue-collar worker who knew pre-war life. That's what 76 really, really should have been. I already said that in Fallout Leftovers, but I'm saying it again because I think it is really important. And it's the fact that this gets touched on as heavily as it does, and as strongly as it does, that makes me want to consider 76 a main game in the Fallout series for the sake of this video. Doesn't make it a good game at all, but I think that is what puts it leagues above Fallout Shelter, is that it's willing to kind of look at this other side of, pre-war and post-war life that doesn't get touched on. That's that on that. This was another long one, but I kind of feel like it's two separate ideas kind of pressed together. So, Fallout 76 was exploring kind of this, these labor practices, or the people who... What the fuck is this? Is that a Lamborghini? I hate this neighborhood. That was a Lamborghini! I'm talking about blue-collar workers and proletariats and slave wages, and a fucking Lamborghini just rolls diagonally across a speed bump at 3 miles an hour. Anyways, are y'all enjoying Fallout Leftovers? Is this getting annoying for anybody? I don't know if I'm getting annoyed yet. And of course I'm behind a Buick Enclave. Of all vehicles, I'm behind a Buick Enclave. This is Fallout Leftovers, and this is talking about Fallout in other media, which is to say, the Fallout movie we could have had in 2000, the Fallout movie that I honestly think should be made, and of course, Amazon's series. I should stress, none of these things actually happened. A treatment for a script for a Fallout movie was written in 2000, and I think it was pitched to 20th Century Fox, who did not pick it up. It's been a long time since I read that page on the wiki. And Amazon's series has yet to even begin. I think we're going to start with the oldest thing first, which is the film treatment. If I recall correctly, and my memory is going to be spotty on this one, and I'm going to try to keep it brief, it was kind of like a welding of the first two Fallout games. It was set in Los Angeles or San Francisco, but inside of a vault. It might have been Vault 13, I don't remember. But a group of people, or maybe even just one guy, upset with living in a vault his whole life, wants to go out and see the world. And he does, and it's depraved and messed up, and it harkens back to Mad Max tropes. But at the end of the film, he actually goes and meets, I think, the Master. And destroys the Master, because the Master had, the Gek or something. The final scene in the film is, this guy and his newfound families, kids and things. They're going fishing, they're farming crops, and the world's kind of, in a way, back to normal. I don't think it would have been a particularly interesting film. I don't think it would have been very, very true to the thematic elements of Fallout's 1 or 2. It is kind of just a generic sci-fi post-apoc movie. And honestly, let's be real, if any director was going to get that film, it would have been Paul W.S. Anderson, who directed the Resident Evil films. He got a bunch of stunt crew, injured and killed working on that, and most recently was responsible for the Monster Hunter film, which is about the U.S. Army fighting Rathalos. It wouldn't have been good, because, who else would direct a Fallout movie circa 2000? The only other names that come to mind are Yoey Bull, who openly hates video games, and his films exist to mock people who like the source material. I don't think he would touch Fallout, because he seems to touch actual, like, franchises that have more potential. Because I believe he made the Tomb Raider film. I know he did Postal, the movie. But Postal, especially Postal 2, was caught up in a whole lot of media, like firestorming, because of its open-ended, depraved nature. And that actually led to it being quite successful for the time. And it still is. Postal 2 is a tremendously well-selling game, even in 2020. And it still got an update very recently, which is kind of, I don't know if frightening is the correct word. Very interesting. And there's a very slim chance that the Wachowskis, I guess I'm projecting here, of all the early 2000s directors that I think would touch Fallout, the Wachowskis seem like the one that I would be the most content with, although I sincerely doubt that the actual, like subtext of Fallout would be very prevalent in that film, seeing how many people like The Matrix and V for Vendetta and completely missed the point of both films. It would have just kind of reinforced the trope that video game movies aren't great. That's my personal take. I don't think any real director at that time would have taken Fallout as a source material seriously. And I will talk about the people I do think would treat it seriously in just a few moments. But I do want to actually talk about the Amazon series real fast, even though I haven't seen any of it besides that trailer they put out in like May or June. It's going to be terrible. I don't need to watch it to tell you that. Even though it is from the director of Westworld, and I've heard that series is, 1, good, and 2, understands its source material very well, the fact that the biggest corporation on Earth is funding a series about a game that's as anti-corporate as it is kind of just confirms in my head that a lot of the anti-corporate message of Fallout is going to be lost. We mentioned WALL-E somewhere in the leftovers, and I think it's going to fit in kind of that same avenue. There will be some anti-corporate rhetoric, but it's not going to be the point of the Fallout series. It's going to be glossed over, and I do sincerely believe that one of the Bethesda era, either Eldritch or Alien, just in general, one of the supernatural elements of the Bethesda Fallouts is going to be at play somewhere in the Amazon series as a means to kind of soften the blow. You know, again, with WALL-E, the directors actually had to dial back the amount of corporate satire in WALL-E because they are such a huge corporate entity, the Walt Disney Corporation. And they're going to do the exact same thing with the Fallout series, because if you go too anti-corporate, Amazon's not going to fund you. So I sincerely doubt it's going to have much of the punch of the modern Fallout series. Best case scenario, it's just going to be kind of a post-apocalyptic sci-fi thing. They're going to overcomplicate the props for the N99 pistol and the power armor. They're going to make a new type of power armor that will then retroactively be added to the Fallout 4 Creation Club and Fallout 76. They're going to cast Ron Perlman as a major character, but he'll only appear in like 2 episodes. He'll do the opening narration, and then he'll reveal himself as like a major faction leader at the end of Season 1, and then make one more appearance in Season 2 in like a big battle and get killed. Actually, you know what? No. I'm gonna play my hand now. He is going to be Thomas Eckert, the final president of the U.S. and one of the leading members of the Enclave. Maybe not Thomas Eckert specifically, but he will be like the president of the Enclave in the Amazon series. I am calling it right now. And if that is the case, then I'm sorry. But no, I sincerely think it's just going to be another weird post-apoc sci-fi thing with some 50s edge to it. They're going to play like ink spots in the first episode, or maybe its opening credits theme will be ink spots. It's going to be set. I'm going to say Ohio. It's going to be set away from the East Coast, because that's where Bethesda makes their games. They're all on the coast. It's not going to be set in the West Coast, because Bethesda doesn't want to touch the West Coast, because they hold some sort of twisted reverence for it. But it's not. So it's going to be set on the eastern half of the U.S., but it's going to be set away from the actual coast, so that way Bethesda can continue to make games about New York and Maine and Florida and Georgia. So yes, it's going to be set like somewhere in like Ohio or Kentucky or Alabama, somewhere inland. And lastly, I do want to talk about Fallout as a movie, because I think it would work under one very specific circumstance. I think the story of Ulysses, like his life, could make a movie, because Ulysses is such a deep, nuanced, complex character. And New Vegas only scratches the surface of Ulysses, even though he is an integral figure in 3 of the 4 DLCs. And hell, was originally an integral figure in Fallout New Vegas as a whole. He got cut late into development, but they kept him around for the DLCs. He's in the deck of cards you get if you pre-ordered a special edition of New Vegas. And he actually shares a version of his name with an AI in Van Buren. So it's clear that the character of Ulysses/Odysseus was planned for a decade before he made it into New Vegas. And he has such a rich, complex history and such rich characterization. I do think he would make a very interesting subject for a film about American exceptionalism and consumerism and kind of American proto-fascism, because we've had ties to it forever. We were one of the few nations that gave escaping Nazis work. If you were a Nazi scientist, you could continue your experiments in the U.S. working for the U.S. government. And that's how we ended up in space as soon as we did. Even though we were later than the Russians or the Soviets at that point, we still made it into space when we made it into space, thanks to Nazi technology. So with that in mind, I think the director of Parasite is the guy I would want in charge of Fallout as a film. I feel like he pulls no punches. He knows what he's talking about. He's got, a very rich kind of understanding of the socioeconomic divides in the U.S. Now, he's never done a sci-fi film to my knowledge, but I think that works in his favor because, again, I sincerely think Fallout works best as the story of people. It doesn't need giant flying bats or android people or, secret, alien enclave technology to be a good world. It just needs people with complex motivations trying to come to an agreement and failing. That is, in my opinion, what Fallout is about. And how that can take the form of warfare, and how, war changes and dehumanizes people, but stays a presence in American society. Like, that there is really the heart of Fallout. So with that in mind, I sincerely think that of all the directors, the director of Parasite would be my pick. I cannot remember his name at the moment. If we can't get him, I sincerely want an independent, small budget filmmaker. I'm calling the shots. I'm hesitant to say Robert Rodriguez. But I feel like Robert Rodriguez would at the very least make an interesting looking Fallout film. It would, I mean, having seen Spy Kids 3D and Shark Boy and Lava Girl, it would actually look like the renders from Fallouts 1 and 2. Which it would be interesting. But I don't think thematically, the actual thematic elements of Fallout would shine in a Robert Rodriguez Fallout movie. That said, those are the only two films of his I've seen. Spy Kids 3D and Shark Boy and Lava Girl. I haven't seen Sin City. I didn't see Spy Kids 1. I didn't see, what was the film he did that was like on a budget of $1,000? Was that like La Cucaracha? Whatever his original film was, I have not seen that. So I have not seen the vast majority of Rodriguez's work. There is a very good chance that he absolutely could nail the thematic elements of Fallout while nailing its kind of, janky 50s Atom Punk, Uncanny Valley CG look of the DOS games. But I don't know. That one's a maybe. Robert Rodriguez is definitely a maybe. Peter Jackson? I don't know. If it's done like how Tintin was done, I want a second Tintin. The second Tintin will be the very next film I see. Mark my words. I've only seen I've seen three films. I've seen 3 films front to back since The Adventures of Tintin, which I saw in 2012. I've seen... What was that? The Lady Eve, which was like a 30s or 40s screwball comedy about snakes or something. I saw Citizen Kane, and then I saw Wakefield. Those are the only 3 movies I've seen in their entirety since The Adventures of Tintin, because I want my next major film to be a second Tintin, and that's the only film I want to see in a theater. Otherwise, cinema actually just straight up doesn't exist. I forget films exist. But Peter Jackson seems like somebody who really knows what he wants and what he's doing. Titanic's set design was award-winning, and it's still phenomenal. He did the Lord of the Rings movies, which everybody's raved about. Again, the set and prop design in that movie is phenomenal. I haven't seen it. And then he did Tintin, which was an animated film, but the attention to detail was amazing. The CG looked stylized but realistic, and it doesn't really fall into an uncanny valley, especially when it's moving. It looks really good. And that is a last resort pick. But of any other directors, those are the 3 I would want in charge of Fallout if it doesn't go to an independent artist who can make the anti-corporate, anti-capitalist, manifesto that Fallout is. Anti-fascist manifesto that Fallout is. Fallout wears a lot of hats, and I don't think a corporation can wear all those hats that Fallout wears. This is Fallout Leftovers, and about 20 minutes ago we talked iconic elements, but I forgot the most iconic of elements in the Fallout series. Ron Perlman. I talked about him briefly in the Fallout 4 segment of the analysis, but in Leftovers I haven't talked about Ron Perlman yet. So while it might seem hypocritical of me to say we need to, buck some of these iconic elements, we can have a Fallout game without them, Ron Perlman is the one thing that I honestly think a Fallout game really needs to stand out. I mean, Ron Perlman's been doing it since 1997. He gives the opening speech in Fallouts 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 76. I don't see a reason to get rid of Ron Perlman, because he's not a character. He's just a narrator. And it's clear that, 1, Perlman loves doing this stuff. Every couple weeks on his Twitter, he always posts something as a nod to Fallout fans. And usually it's just an image of him in a former role with the words "War Never Changes" on top of it. It's stuff like that. Maybe not every couple weeks. It might have been once or twice. But Ron isn't really a part of Fallout's world. He doesn't add or subtract anything to Fallout other than telling us about the conditions America was in before the war and where we are now. Who we are, what we're doing, and what to expect. So I don't personally see a reason to exclude Perlman. Fallout 4, the opening is from the perspective of Brian Delaney's character, Nate. Nate's a former soldier, he's wealthy, he lives in this almost gated community. He has a wife and a kid. But no part of his speech couldn't have been a Ron Perlman speech with only a little bit of alteration. That's my issue. And in fact, it feels tacked on. Personally, Nate's opening speech talks about how the resources of the U.S. are drying up and the world is ready to come to an end. But this is supposed to be a speech he gives to other soldiers in, what town was that? One of the first couple towns of the game. But he was going to give that speech that night about, pretty much the eulogy of the Earth. Which doesn't make sense. I honestly think if the game opened a day before and it's Ron Perlman giving this speech, and then we're told that there will be a second unrelated speech given at a place later, it'd be fine. They tried to make Fallout 4 more character-oriented, but the character you play as really doesn't affect Fallout. You play as an upperclassman, somebody who's for the world at large in 2077. Somebody who's wealthy. And it doesn't make a difference in the long run. They don't have reserves of cash they can, take out of mothballs 200 years later. They don't have, the only the only real artifact of the pre-war world that you have on your character is the wedding band. And I think it only sells for a couple hundred caps. So whether you play as, wealthy soldier or wealthy lawyer or, stupid person, the actual, world of Fallout that you experience doesn't change. And the speech is completely disconnected from everything. Trying to make a character-driven Fallout game like Fallout 4 ultimately kind of just backfired because you really don't care about... I might be projecting. I don't care about Nate or Nora's past all that much as a player. And I don't care about Sean. Sean sucks. I hate Sean. Sean is probably my least favorite character in Fallout 4. Sean is my least favorite character in Fallout 4. So I don't care about that family at all. And in making a character-driven game, Fallout 4 has failed on that regard. Definitely. I don't think there's any way to argue around that. But we're getting off track. The speech given at the beginning of the game could have been a Ron Perlman speech. If they want to make Ron Perlman a character in the world of Fallout, honestly, 76 did it pretty well. I hate to say it like that, but Fallout 76's intro tells us just how skewed and militaristic and messed up the world of Fallout is. I want to say the guy who gives that speech at Vault 76 implies that the Revolutionary War was fought over the right to bear arms. And there is this huge red flag that could have been, in some parts, unironic. There is a non-zero chance that just how, constitutionalist and conservative that opening narration that Ron gives in 76 is could be unironic. After all, member of the Trump family, was a major investor in ZeniMax Media up until his death. So there was Trump blood money all over ZeniMax. Pretty much from, I think it was Fallout 3 until 76. Maybe things will change with him gone. But I doubt it. I sincerely doubt it. But for what it's worth, the 76 opening at least tells you just how, disturbingly conservative the Fallout world had become. And Ron Perlman is definitely a character in that game. He is not this third party like in 1, 2, 3 in New Vegas. But I think at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is I hate sauerkraut. No. Ron Perlman voicing the intro to Fallout isn't a problematic, iconic element of Fallout. Because Ron Perlman is, 1, cool, and 2, as long as he stays objective, as long as the narrator character stays objective or is in character but gets challenged by kind of the events of the game or even just plain as day history, I don't think buck the trends of iconic elements should apply to Ron Perlman. Besides, Ron Perlman makes me feel like I'm at home when I'm playing a Fallout game. So, yeah, keep Ron Perlman, but other iconic elements, Caps, Vault Boy, Nuka-Cola, Power Armor. Let's try to see just how we can make a Fallout without those elements. Because Fallout 2 proved, to some extent, that getting rid of some of that stuff is completely possible. This is Fallout Leftovers, and we are talking the difference between how Black Isle and Obsidian treat Special versus Bethesda. This one will be short. I will make it short because I really only have one thing to say. In Fallout 3 and in Fallout 4, you can max out your Special. There is a perk you can take at level 30 in Fallout 3 called Almost Perfect. That gives you a 9 in every stat. You can then go collect the Outtake bobbleheads scattered throughout the game to get your last special stat in each of the 7 specials. So you can have a 10 in every stat. Likewise, eventually in Fallout 4, if you play it long enough, you will have a 10 in every stat. Because the only way to keep leveling up is to keep taking perks, which involves raising your special so you can get those perks. Granted, the highest I've ever seen a player level in Fallout 4 is like 90-something, and that's only half of the perks. And granted, 70 of the perks are increasing the specials. In the other games, it is next to impossible to actually hit a 10 in every stat. Actually, I think it's impossible to get a 10 in every stat in all of those games, if I am correct. Because I believe you can only get, I think it's Intense Training, which is a perk that lets you take an extra special point. You only get 10 of those in New Vegas. And you only start with, like, at most 35 special. You would need 60 special points to then get a 10 in every stat. If you're playing Tale of Two Wastelands, you can take Almost Perfect, because it's in there. Yippee. That's really it. It's in my mind, it's Bethesda's afraid you're going to miss out on a part of the game they worked really hard on. Even in 4. They kept bragging about how cool their perk system is. Why not have the player be able to have every single perk in the game at their maximum level all at the same time? Fallout 76 is a little better in this regard. You can only have, I believe it's 50 or 57 of the 70 special points, but special points in that game are really just kind of perk slots. If you have an 8 in intelligence, you can take 8 intelligence perk cards. Whether that's 3 of the same perk to level that perk up, or that's, other handfuls of perks. Bethesda wants you to make the character that you're most comfortable with, but give you flexibility to change that character. The other games will tell you, hey, you dumped all your points into charisma? Okay, that's how you want to play. And I kind of appreciate that, because it makes the Obsidian Fallout games feel more definite. And I guess Obsidian, I mean Black Isle. 1, 2, and New Vegas. and then Bethesda's 3, 4, and 76. But in the Black Isle games on the West Coast, it feels more definite because you build a character and then you really have to spec that character up. You can't really respec that character. So if you dump all your points into gunplay, you're really going to have to get very good at the gunplay inorganically. You're going to have to take the skills and the perks to be better at shooting people with guns. If you've got, a super high strength character with a lot of endurance, but low agility, you can't play a sneak character. But you might want to play a melee character. And lucky for you, there's 2 different melee skills, and there's a ton of melee perks, including some just found out in the world. I feel like, with that in mind, the West Coast games respect the player's intelligence more, because if you do make a messed up build, you kind of have to live with it or restart. There are ways to respec your stats in, I know at the very least, New Vegas. The auto dock at the sink can actually give you a full re-evaluation. But if you're playing the game as it was meant to be played, so you play almost all the way to the end of the game, then you play Dead Money, Honest Hearts, Old World Blues, you only have Lonesome Road and Hoover Dam left. So you might as well just keep doing what you're doing. Unless you're planning on 100%ing New Vegas. Whereas in Fallout 4, if you create a really dumb build, like say you dump all of your points into, I don't know, what's a useless stat in that game? Agility. Agility is a really pointless stat in Fallout 4. It determines how many action points you get, but the VAT system in Fallout 4 kind of sucks. But if you play an endurance-only character, in 10 levels, you can level up one of the other specials to their maximum. Actually, hell, in 9 levels, because you start with a point anyways. So, the East Coast games respect your time. You don't have to go start a whole new save file if you mess up your character build. You only have to do that if you play Nuka World. This is Fallout Leftovers. And this is actually one that is recorded after the video came out. Somebody wanted my take on the board game, the comic book, and like the other media. I mentioned the films, I mentioned the Amazon series, but there's a whole lot of other stuff. So the comic, I've never read the comic, and I haven't played the board game. I want to try it in Tabletop Sim if it's got the rules included. I want to try the New California expansion just because I want to see what that's like. I feel like New California is probably going to be overall an improvement over just the base board game, because most expansions are better than the base game, except for like Ku's expansion makes the game too complex. I feel like Ku is best with simplicity. And then there is Imploding Kittens. That one's just like not great. But I want to try that one. And I haven't read the comic book, but to my knowledge, the comic book is, one, it's canon. But two, it's a New Vegas pre-order item about Benny. And most of what I covered, most of the Benny lore I covered in the video. He was a former Great Khan. He was part of the Boot Riders. There was a clan that House brought in to run the Tops. Bingo wanted to be he wanted them to be nomadic and to break off Mr. House. Benny wanted to stay in the Tops. They had a knife fight. Benny won, and he decided we're staying, and that's because he had found a Securitron. He was able to hack it. He was able to make it just spill the beans, and it was his yes-man, and that was going to help him usurp the throne of Mr. House and drive the NCR and Caesar's Legion out of there. Except, you blow him to smithereens, because it's funny. It's everything about Benny is funny. It's the most underperformed sex scene in any video game ever. I don't think there's a ton of them, but I don't play games that involve any amount of sex. I complained to my coworkers today that this generation won't get to play Jumpstart 3rd grade. Do you think I see any action? I don't. It's all intentional. I don't want it. I want Jumpstart 3rd grade. It's just like a really stiffly performed sex scene, an implied foot job. All of his injury sounds are kind of just Matthew Perry going, ooh, His suit is ugly, his face is tiny, and there is never any point in this game that he actually puts up a fight. If you challenge him to a gunfight at a Caesar's Legion, if that's how you want to duel him, he pulls out Maria, which is like the 4th weakest gun in the game, especially in his hands. It's just a special version of the 9mm that does a tiny bit more damage and lasts a little longer before needing to be repaired. Whoop-de-doo. His melee skill is pretty good from what I remember, but he just carries a switchblade. You know, like, almost as weak as using your bare hands. Anyways, I got off track. The comic book. It's fine. I haven't, like, read it, especially not in its entirety. I've skimmed the scans on the Fallout Wiki. Ditto the board game. I don't know how the board game works. It kind of looks like, what is that one zombie game? There's like a zombie horde game. I forget what it's called. I played it in playtesting. Not playtesting. Physical prototyping. It's like a cooperative game, but it's also competitive. You have to like kill the most zombies, but you're also like looking out for each other. There's like buildings you can go inside of that contain equipment and zombies, and you build it street by street. It's like that. It's kind of like Carcassonne, but Fallout themed. That's at least what it looks like. Again, I don't know how it actually plays. I have it downloaded on Tabletop Sim. I have the Fallout board game with New California, so I'm interested. I can expand this to talk about the other merch and like the cartoons, because in general, my feelings. Bethesda's respect for the actual thematic elements of Fallout and the prevalence of Vault Boy in our pop cultural zeitgeist are inversely proportional. Fallout 1, Fallout 2, very obscure character. People call him Fallout Boy. People called him Pip Boy. People just called him the Boy. I found a forum thread from like 1999 that was like, what's wrong with the Boy? Like, I just saw like a forum thread where they just called him the Boy. And it was hilarious to me. This is like July, like way, like waist deep into the night in July. But Fallout 3, very little of the character in the actual promotional materials. You know, the ads focused on real people, and it kind of has this over-the-top, self-aware B-movie shtick. I'm not particularly fond of that self-aware, like, cheesy B-movie shtick. It works in moderation. And that is really the most I can say about it. I feel like Fallout 3's marketing was just like really self-aware, but it was all live action. There was no Vault Boy. It was like dads in suits telling you that the world was going to go up in nuclear hellfire. And then cut to like, you know, they'd play like Bongo, Bongo, Bongo. And you see footage of somebody point blanking with a sniper rifle blasting a super mutant in the face. Like, that's how every single piece of promotional work, every trailer, every commercial for Fallout 3 was exactly like that. And then Fallout 4 happened. New Vegas got next to no marketing. It was like a behind the scenes of the voice actors. There was it wasn't quite live action, but it was like cinematic CG of Eddie traveling across the road. And then they also made the opening cutscene into a trailer or commercial for some reason. But then Fallout 4, actually the aftermath of Fallout 3, Vault Boy everything. Vault Boy lunchboxes, Vault Boy pins, Vault Boy lanyards and buttons, Vault Boy everything. The art from Fallout 1 of the people going in the big vault, the cross-section of the vault, with the Vault Boy over the top of it, that was like redrawn and just slapped onto a lunchbox. Fallout 4, they did a bunch of animated, like cartoons, of Vault Boy. He uses his skill well, he doesn't use it well. I'm sorry, it was special, because there were no skills in Fallout 4, god damn it. But then they made, like, Funko Pops and blind bags, and they actually, like, in-game, the perks are represented as pins of the different perk icons. You could buy those. I think you could probably buy all of them at one point. Somebody somewhere has a set of all 77 Vault Boy pins, and they are the saddest person in the entire world. And then they tried to make Cappy and Bottle a thing. Fallout 76 comes around. Vault Boy is literally everywhere. He's on the front of the box now. You want a player icon? Yeah, which one do you want? There's like a million Vault Boys. There's a few Vault Gals. There's Cappy. There's Bottle. There's the Power Armor. There's the fucking Pip-Boy from Fallout 4. That's a player avatar for Fallout 76. And I feel like at this point, it's only a matter of time before they give Vault Boy his own game, other than Fallout Shelter. No, they're gonna be like, you wanted a classic RPG. Well, you got one, and it's just like a JRPG featuring Vault Boy, and like Vault Boyified versions of like Preston Garvey, and Rose from Fallout 76, and Modus, and Three Dog, James, and you'll fight like cartoony super mutants and centaurs and roaches, and the final boss will be the Enclave for some fucking reason. It'll have level ups, but when you level up, you just get to level up your like perk points, so you can use more perks, or your health. AP will be like mana. You'll use that to like, use special versions of your attacks. Like you'll have a normal, unarmed, melee, shoot. Or maybe, melee and 2 guns. But if you want to, target a certain part of the enemy, that'll cost you action points. You want to use a special version of a weapon, that's going to cost you action points. It'll be a Paper Mario game, is what I'm saying. It'll be like it'll essentially be Bug Fables with a fucking Vault Boy skin over top of it. And we're supposed to be like, yay! No! Like, there's an episode of SpongeBob, I believe it's called The Krusty Sponge, where a food critic that's voiced by Gene Shalit celebrates SpongeBob. He calls him a great cook and a charismatic character or something along those lines. And Mr. Krabs sees that, and then he immediately drives SpongeBob into the ground. Like, SpongeBob on everything. SpongeBob is doing everything. He has to run the train and cook the patties and pose for pictures. And everybody eventually just gets sick of him. I mean, it's because that's what we need to get people to get Bethesda to stop using Vault Boy. We have to get them to sell blue and yellow burger patties that get people sick. And then all this Vault Boy hype will be over. And then we can get to the characters that really matter. Like Botley from Jumpstart's 3rd grade. Brought it back around. This is Fallout Leftovers. And I would actually like to talk about something that I only realized today. Fallout and Monopoly have a lot in common. A disturbing amount in common, really. Modern Fallout and modern Monopoly. I should stress both of those. They are both franchises that started off criticizing capitalism. And the fact that, the world of this game is unfun and, unfair is the point. But over time has been kind of bastardized into a celebration of capitalism. And they use a funny cartoon mascot all dressed up to do so. For people who are unaware, Monopoly started off as I think it was called the landlord's game. I wrote a whole paper on this back in college, and it was one of my favorite papers to write. But it was called the landlord's game or something like that. It was a game in which you acquired property around the spaces on the board. And the way to win was to simply run your opponents into bankruptcy. And the lady who created this game, as you played it with her, she would kind of explain, the game design and explain how it relates to actual landlords and, kind of the unfair practices of the era. How the landlord barely had to do anything but sit back and acquire profit. And once you reach a certain point in Monopoly, you aren't buying resources or even really thinking. You have everything you need. You're just doing victory laps around the board while you bleed your opponents dry. And that was the point of her game. And then it was the Parker brothers saw that game, but saw it divorced from kind of that discussion, and they stole it out from under her, and that was that. They slapped a name on it, and they're just like, be the last player standing to win. And then that was Monopoly. The critique is still there. The game design hasn't changed, just now removed from that explanation as to why the game works the way it does, why the world of Monopoly works the way it works. It looks stupid. Likewise, Fallout was, anti-capitalist, anti-corporate, anti-nationalist, anti-war, and above all, in a way, anti-conservative. Because the conservative ideal is turn back the clock and scorch the earth so it can't be pushed forward again. We're seeing that right now. Literally, Mitch McConnell is bragging about how long it's going to take Democrats to undo the damage of the Trump administration. What Trump undid in 4 years will take a Biden administration 8, 12, 16. And all they need is another conservative in the White House ready to tear down more. And that's that. And that's how fascism works. That's how stripping away the rights of people works. It's very easy to destroy. It's a whole lot more work to undo that destruction. It's very easy to pound nails into the coffee table. But to not only rip them back out, but then also repair the damage. Fill the holes and sand it, buff it, stain it so it doesn't look like you jammed a bunch of holes into it. That's a lot more difficult. That was the original point of 1997's Fallout, and 98's Fallout 2. And that subtext and that kind of lore is still in the world of Fallout, but it's pushed to the background in favor of celebrating, big communist-hating, nuke-chucking robots. Because that sums up everything wrong with how Bethesda writes Fallout, and it really kind of ties back to my whole Monopoly-like metaphor. In better hands, the character of Liberty Prime would be straight up terrifying. And not just terrifying, but sickening. You know, the American government built this gigantic monument to nuke-chucking and communism-hating. And we're so busy building it that they lost the war it was supposed to fight in. And not only did they lose it, they dragged the whole world down with them. And so when you see this thing in action, it's supposed to be, or rather, I guess, in more talented hands, it would be dangerous. I mean, it is dangerous. In Fallout 3, it's very easy for you and your companions to get crushed underneath Liberty Prime, especially if you run in front of Liberty Prime. If you get ahead of Liberty Prime, you are about to become salsa. You're about to become the next guest on those pneumatic press videos. And that's like, that's the gospel truth of it. And it should just, you know, it's a big propaganda machine that was going to obliterate Alaska. But Fallout 3 and, I guess, moreover, Fallout 4 don't care. In Fallout 4, Liberty Prime is, like, straight up their deus ex machina. Liberty Prime might as well be the hand of God personally smiting the Institute. Everything that gigantic communist-hating nuke-chucking robot does is played up to be as cool as possible, including when it stops and salutes Bunker Hill. There's no buts about it. What happens there is straight up glorifying the war-hungry fascist America that the Fallout world had become. Much like how Monopoly is glorifying the exact thing the Landlord's game was criticizing. And in both cases, they have kind of wrapped back around and become aware of the critique, but not to a degree to fix it. No. You know, it's too revered to fix this. We'll just make fun of the problems. You know, there are like a dozen versions of Monopoly that allow things like, like the house rules that we've all played by. You know, there's versions of Monopoly where you can put money on Park Place in the rules. There's versions of Monopoly where if you go to jail too many times, you become Mr. Monopoly and rampage around the board stealing from other players. There's a version of Monopoly where there's bonus like cards that tell you how to cheat at the game. And if you get caught cheating at the game, like shorting a player money or stealing from the bank or moving one too many spaces, you get handcuffed to the board. There's a version of Monopoly that touts itself as being, quote, the only version of Monopoly you will ever finish, or something like that. It's like a fast Monopoly. It's like finally a version of Monopoly you can finish. And likewise, Fallout 76 contains a ton of like self-aware nods to the fact that Bethesda has no idea what they're doing with the lore. The fact that there is suddenly a surprise third branch of the Enclave that somehow decided they were the Enclave just as much as the Oil Rig or DC or whatever millions of other Enclave versions there are. Like, the fact that they became the Enclave independent of the West Coast Enclave is ridiculous. They did like a G.I. Joe themed battle pass with, you know, G.I. Joe themed power armor and plasma casters and miniguns and other sorts of shit like that. And, you know, it plays up, you know, the Brotherhood of Steel imagery. The fact that the Brotherhood of Steel exists in 76 is kind of, you know, making fun of the fact that Bethesda just jams the Brotherhood of Steel in everything. You know, how did they get there? Oh, there was a crashed satellite that told them to become the Brotherhood of Steel or some shit. It's like, there is no subtlety. And then you have, stuff like Fallout Shelter. Everything's a Vault Boy, because Vault Boys are iconic little quirky cartoon character. We can do funny cartoon antics with the Vault Boy. Oh ho ho, look at him scrounging for every last bottle cap like you do when you play our fucking video game. It gets sickening. It's disgusting how many versions of Monopoly there are that are literally just Monopoly but slightly better. And they're kind of, the fact that they're so like cheekily self-aware of the fact that these stupid rules and gimmicks improve Monopoly is fucking disgusting. Like, the fact that Monopoly sucks is the point of Monopoly, because you divorced it from the fact that Monopoly is supposed to suck because it's about landlords. That's my issue. It's frustrating, is what it is. And I wouldn't say this if I didn't care about Fallout. I think it is a very important series that is becoming less important the more Bethesda messes with it. And I think the point behind Monopoly is a very good point. But the context is completely gone. And Hasbro, who owns Parker Brothers, seems to be aware of the fact that they've divorced Monopoly from its original point, but they're kind of just frustratingly smug about it. It's like, oh, we're making Monopoly fun. You know what would have made... Monopoly wasn't meant to be fun. If you had paid attention to the Landlord's game and you actually listened to the person who made it, you would have known that. This is Fallout Leftovers, and after Fallout analysis, you might be asking, okay, so if these are your issues with the world of Fallout, with the games, how would you fix them? Like, what type of Fallout game would you want? And I will answer that. If they straight up let me direct a Fallout game, first of all, it'll be set in Chicago, because of course it would be. I think we could keep, like, the carnage of Fallout Tactics opening, but kind of... I mean, if Bethesda's gonna have their, oh yeah, we only launch one nuke at an area and that's a mentality, then we launch just a really dirty nuclear warhead, one of them, at Chicago. Originally, it was supposed to hit dead center in the loop, but due to miscalculations or what have you, it landed in Lake Michigan, immediately outside of the Museum of Science and Industry. Minimize the actual nuclear damage, but now, even 2 centuries later, a massive rad storm churns over Chicago, specifically on the south side. So, as we saw in other Fallout games, the world was getting ready for war, and all of your mascots were selling you this idea that, you could stay safe if you bought our product. A bunch of them got together and sponsored an exhibit at the museum that would have been about the tools that will win the Sino-American War. It was set to open October 31st, 2077. It was showcasing some of the new technology Americans could expect to see at home and overseas in 2078 and 2079. New types of weapons, new types of bombs, new types of power armor and regular armor, weapons that fire caseless ammunition, and all sorts of other pipe-dreamy projects were to be shown off. They never did, because the world ended a week before the exhibit was set to open. So now we fast forward a couple hundred years. The Brotherhood of Steel that was in Chicago ends up leaving the city because it just starts becoming too chaotic. After all, Chicago is kind of the heart of America. It's where all the train lines lead. And if you're following the tracks, naturally you're just going to end up in Chicago if you don't end up on the coast. The Brotherhood of Steel would have this kind of infight in the 2260s or so about whether or not they continue to, stick to their doctrine and stay in Chicago, hoarding technology and keeping it safe, or if they take the the Lion's Pride approach and kind of become a more inclusive, nightly neighborhood watch type group. Eventually, they can't come to an agreement. It leads to a civil war within the Brotherhood of Steel, and the actual Brotherhood themselves leave, and the people who wanted to share the tech and the information stay. These people, now disenchanted with the Brotherhood of Steel and unwilling to use its name, but use a name like, the Archivists. They archive the world of yesterday to learn from it, but they're also willing to share their knowledge with others. They record their findings in holotapes and in books, and from there on, the Archivists kind of become one of the bigger factions in Chicago. Also around this time, the 2260s or so, the NCR has sent a group of ambassadors to Chicago. Their goal is to set up an NCR embassy in the city, like right in the loop, or right in Union Station. The major groups of the city of Chicago come together, they discuss their plans, they look at the NCR contracts, and in the middle of constructing this embassy, or I guess repurposing a building to fill the role of the embassy, the major groups in the city say no, they refuse. Because effectively, what would happen is where the NCR's embassy is counted as NCR territory, and that would then give them a strategic location to just consume the city. It would all just be NCR. Additionally, in their contract, they have to send caravans weekly to the NCR's, the actual city of NCR. The terms that they're given are too self-serving for the NCR, and they don't really help the city enough. So they disagree, but the embassy is kind of left unfinished and quickly gets filled up with squatters. But a bunch of NCR equipment ends up in the city as a result of these early talks. And the people of Chicago come together to form a provisional government called the Neighborhood Watch. The Neighborhood Watch's goal is simply just to keep the city safe. Keep its people safe, and solve criminal problems within the city. So we fast forward a little bit more. It's the 2280s now, and a group of people that were once part of the Archivists are disenchanted with the old world. It seems like everybody's attached to the old world, kind of to a creepy degree. They are very much fetishists of the old age. They have this misplaced, misguided, unfounded respect for the pre-war world. And they kind of want to usher in a new world. So they take the name of Brave New World. They silently break off, they disappear, and this group called the Brave New World, they're essentially like the inverse of the Enclave. The Enclave is fascist, but they're trying to, rebuild old America. Brave New World would be fascist, but trying to destroy. And then the Archivists announce that they've found something buried inside of the museum. They don't have any, they don't know for certain exactly what it is. There's something in the museum, in this kind of vault-like wing of the museum. There was supposed to be an exhibit that was set to open, and it never did. And they call it the biggest treasure of the old world, still undiscovered. This leads to a gold rush. Word about this thing travels fast. And by 2291, it's made its way all the way as far west as Arroyo and Navarro, and as far east as Far Harbor. There is a gold rush of people coming into the city, getting the trains running again, so that way everything kind of funnels into Chicago, to send a whole bunch of people from a whole bunch of walks of life into the city to get at that treasure. You would play as one of them. You'd have this very open sort of character creation system You get to decide where your character is from. Are they a trader from the Commonwealth? Are they a carpenter from Ohio? Are they a farmer from Illinois? Are they from a vault somewhere in the world or in the U.S.? Are they from Navarro? Are they from Far Harbor, Capital Wasteland, New Vegas, New Canaan? And you would build your character kind of, Fallout 3 New Vegas style. Your specials all start at 5. You pick 2 traits. You pick a couple tagged skills. I will say right now, I think the kind of a cross between the Elder Scrolls and the Fallout system. You do naturally gain skill points in the skills you use a lot, but very slowly. And not a lot of them. Most of your skill points will come from level ups. And with that, I think we can bring back leveling up a skill all the way to 300%. And of course make it, slower at 100% on, and slower still from 200 on. Just like Fallout 2. The big thing I want to emphasize with this kind of concept I have, I've definitely thought about this, is cooperation. There are 3 main factions trying to get into the museum. There's the archivists who want to just document what's in it and protect it and show the world what pre-war America was trying to do. You have Brave New World, who was trying to destroy the museum and destroy these kind of monuments to the old world, but surprise, they have a change of heart and decide that they're going to use the weaponry against people they deem ill-fit for the Brave New World. After all, these weapons are technically not pre-war, they were never used. And then you'd have the Neighborhood Watch, who simply just wants it open so people stop coming in and causing problems in the city. Because if they open it and go, look, it's just deactivated bombs, prototype weapons, armor that doesn't work, then everybody will stop showing up because it's just a bunch of props, effectively. But you don't need to side with any of them. One of the big things I want to emphasize is you can go it alone. It can just be you venturing out into the city, making it to the south side, and throwing open the door on the museum. It's going to be a pain in the ass. There'll be a ton of enemies. They'll be very high level. They will be, very strong and smart and capable. And you'll just be one guy. So what you can do is, when you're siding with one of these 3 factions, you can bring NPC companions with you. You will have a proper party. It won't just be you and a guy and a dog. I'm thinking up to 4 additional humans and a non-human character. So either a robot or an animal. In total, a party of 6. Each character would level up on their own independently. They would have their own tagged skills and traits. And as they level up, they offer you perks, and they also get their own special perks. So you might have a character that's good at convincing others, and he might have played like a doctor or something on radio dramas that exist in the post-war world. As he levels up, he might get, better ways to lie or convince others, but he'll also gain medical skills because he's sick of just playing a doctor. He's going to become one. Where you have a weak point in your skills, you can pass it over to one of your companions to take care of. So, if you aren't a smooth talker, you can go to that character. When you are presented a speech check, it will take the highest level from any of the characters that you have with you, and that character will then, say that dialogue or pass that check for you. Your NPC companions will also have their own inventory space. It won't be as big as yours. You might be able to carry, 200, 300 pounds by the time the game's over. They might only carry 100. But they will, or 150 maybe. But not only is that, their weapons and their armor, but they will also scrounge up resources on their own. You might see them go stop and pick some stuff off a raider. Even if you clean that raider out, they will still pick stuff up. If you leave stuff for them to take, they will take it all, but then they're also going to get a little bit of ammo related to the weapon that enemy was carrying, or if it was like a creature, it might be some meat and some hide. You'd be able to trade with them and kind of manage your resources together, and you would also have a party inventory, stuff that everybody in your group shares. So you could stick, your stim packs in there. You could include, like a certain weapon, like the Fat Man, and then everybody gets to use that, and they pull that out when they think they need to. Additionally, some of these NPCs might have vices. They might have, an alcohol addiction or some other type of chem dependency that you can either help them break or you can feed into. Thematically, I think this game, I kind of want it to have like a mob movie, like a crime film. Or not a crime film, like an old gangster movie vibe. Like the what was that from Home Alone? Angels with Dirty Souls or something like that. It'd have like that sort of a vibe. So your 45 auto SMG would be like the 1928 Thompson. It'd be like 1911s and Browning high powers. 10mm I think would be one of the higher tiers, up there along the lines of like 223 and 12.7. Highest tier traditional firearm would be like a 5.4 caseless, based on those like pre-war prototypes. Just because that way we could bring the G11 from Fallout 2 back into a modern Fallout game without it feeling weird. I would like for the ammo customization to return too. That though, I definitely think we could streamline. Definitely keep like the lead, the powder, and everything. But just instead of having to like back out of the menu and jump back in and do that over and over again, it just stays open. You should be like break down and build ammo, or 2 different tabs you can cycle between, and then just work from there. Also, one last thing, and I'm aware it's petty, tactical reloads. I think tac reloads are neat. I think they're cool. I think we could, I think it's time that Fallout has them. Also, no left-handed, right-handed weapons, because that's just stupid. Like left-handed guns held in the right hand. Like the hunting rifle in Fallout 4 that you have to cycle like awkwardly. But that's really what I have at the moment for what I'd like in a Fallout game. This is patron exclusive. Patrons, don't sell my idea to ZeniMax, or if you do, tell them I would actually like to write it and help design it, because I would. Thank you.